When our family cooks together, we take writer's privilege with the meaning of cooking. Cooking together goes beyond the stove. We cook food, of course, but we also cook up new projects and fun places to explore. The family that cooks together stays together. I wanted to give you a peek at our family because you know what? When you have all of your family and friends here, it's always a lot of fun. We've been cooking up all kinds of fun things this week. As you can see, we've got a project going in the kitchen, and it is one that I've looked forward to. We're also playing pretty hard. So, because of that, let's get into the kitchen. My sister-in-law was here, and we had a great time. And you know, when she's here, she likes to prepare a dish that her mother taught her, and especially one that, because they had 6 children in the family, it's usually one that's prepared that can go a very long way and serve a large group, which we needed that. So we're preparing tonight some smothered pork chops, and we're doing it granny style. So let's get to it. As you can see, this pork loin was a half of a pork loin, and I didn't show you the very beginning of it where you could see the price and how large it was, but it was significantly large. And we're taking it and slicing it into slices that are about 1 inch thick, because I think that will cook fairly quickly. We can get them into the smothered gravy that they're going to go in, and this dish is going to be done. We're going to have everything done in about an hour's time. Now, so my sister-in-law, as I said, is doing the cooking and she's doing the slicing, and I think she's really enjoying it. And I'm enjoying just kind of milling around the kitchen as she does it. Now she is adding a layer of olive oil on both sides of the chops. And she's flipping them over and getting the oil on each side. And she's oiling them pretty generously. Then she's going to add a seasoning that I just happen to have in the cabinet that was called Tajin, Tajrin, and I will put a picture of that so you can see it. We're also adding some garlic powder, and we're going to do one side and then we'll flip everything over and do the other side. And these chops really do need to be well seasoned before we get ready to actually cook them, and we're going to let these seasonings stay on them for a few minutes just to let that seasoning get into each of the chops. So we're turning them over and just giving them a moment to get happy with the seasoning. So they've already been oiled, so she's adding the same seasonings on the opposite side. And just sprinkling and giving them a really good cover. And you know, garlic and pork and garlic and most meats are really a good combination. Now we're not adding any powdered onion powder today, but we are adding lots of pepper. You notice I didn't add any salt at this point, and that's because the Tajin has some salt, and I'm not quite sure how salty that's going to be, so we held off on the salt until later. So she's in the process of cutting up the onions that we're going to be adding, and I'm showing her some frozen mushrooms that I have that I think will just be absolutely delicious in the gravy. We love mushroom gravy, and certainly mushrooms are so good for us. So she's just slicing the onions up, and because we're vacationing in the South, we're using some vidalias, and those vidalias are just so nice and sweet. and they're going to be so good. So she's gotten them sliced into thirds and then giving them another chop to get them into fourths. So I'm just pulling the camera back so you can see everything while we're working. So there's our mushrooms, we've got the onions, we've got a little oil in the pan, and she's breaking up those onions as she goes, and we're just chit-chatting in the kitchen and sharing a lot of family memories. And as you can see, we're just kind of bouncing around each other, which is always a lot of fun. So what I'm doing is just making sure that things are wiped up so that when we finish cooking, everything is going to be pretty clean other than the actual pot itself. So I'm having fun. I'm just trying to make sure that she has everything she needs and ready so that when she gets ready to add it to the pan, she can. Now, she was so funny because freezing mushrooms hasn't been something that she's done. And when she cooks at home, she said that her family is a little smaller. So because of that, when she buys mushrooms, a lot of times a portion of those mushrooms will go bad. Well, freezing them is a good way to be able to maintain those mushrooms and not have that happen. So this was something that I was able to share with her that she can use when she gets home. Now I have rice going in the microwave, and I added in 2 cups of just rice and long grain rice, and I'm added in 4 cups of water. So I'm making sure that our rice is cooking so that it's going to be nice and hot when the time comes. Now I want you to look at the spices and see this Tajin, Tajin. And we use this seasoning for a lot of things. So we've got our flour that we're going to be dipping our chops into, and she's just taking her time putting those chops on some wax paper so that they can sit for a few minutes before they go into the skillet. And she's getting the flour onto each of the chops and doing that very meticulously. As you can see, I'm just cleaning up and being the assistant instead of being the main cook, and which is a lot of fun. I like that part. So this has been a really fun family time in the kitchen. So let's look at those pork chops. Let's get everything prepared. And I really wanted to see what she did. And, she talked about her mom as she was cooking and things that her mother did. And, the real biggie is going to come when it's time to prepare the gravy. I am Leona Dooley, and this is Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme. I thank you for coming by today. Our family loves to cook and to decorate and to chit-chat. And it takes all of those things to make our home a warm and happy place. The kitchen is the hub. It's the heart of the home. It is in our kitchen where we love and we nurture and we encourage and we guide our families over delicious meals or just across the counter. Your kitchen should be the place where everyone wants to come and have a seat and get a hug. You are invited to join our family by subscribing. Thank you to the family members who have been with me for a long time for your weekly support. And I am so grateful to my new family members for subscribing. It's in our kitchens where we're building strong, determined, and loving families. So join me weekly in the kitchen of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme and see what we're up to. Well, let's finish up these pork chops. First of all, we want to make sure that we have them all well floured, and my sister-in-law is certainly taking care of that. And we're just chit-chatting back and forth and enjoying the moment. Now, she's using a fork, as you can see, and she's making sure that each pork chop is well covered. And as she does that, she's putting it out onto a piece of parchment so that the breading has a chance to adhere to each of the chops. And you can see that the chops aren't really that large, but they're just large enough for each person to have at least one. So I'm doing the cleanup while she's working on those chops, and we're trying to get those finished up and just sharing back and forth our techniques and styles for what we do when we're in the kitchen, because every mom has her own technique. Now we've started a few in the skillet, and we added in about an inch of oil into that skillet, and I'm working on the rice that all of this is going over, and preparing that in the microwave. But we're letting these cook, and we have it about on a medium, I'll say about a medium high, and as you can see, they're moving right along. Now what we don't want them to burn. We want to make sure that we have everything nice and brown, nice and golden brown. We also cooked in this pan the mushrooms, the onions. They've already been done, and you can see where they've been taken out and placed in a bowl. So we're going to finish these chops up, and once we've done that, we're going to be ready for the gravy. We're placing a portion of the grease that was in the bottom of the pan into a small bowl, and I'm just leaving a couple of tablespoons of oil down in the pan. You can see where all the leavings were, and so we're sprinkling in the flour that was left on the plate for the chops. And what we're going to do is to let that get good and brown, and because we had so much browning in the bottom of the pan, there's not a lot to do. So you'll notice that we're doing a lot of stirring and just getting everything nice and mixed. Look at how pretty that is. Now, remember I told you there's a secret. So first we're adding in a little bit of salt, and we're being careful with the salt, but here it is. Ice water. Put your ice cubes into that skillet, and you're going to see the prettiest, creamiest gravy develop. So watch closely. And if it's too thick, you can either add water or broth. And in this case, because it's pork chops, I'd probably use a chicken broth if I were going to use a broth. But I just put that ice water in, and there we go. Look at how it's developing. Oh, it looks beautiful. What a beautiful golden brown. And we need just a tiny bit more water. So we're keeping it cold, keeping the ice cold, and keeping it handy just in case we need some more. And if we do, we just add more ice cubes, and that will help us keep that gravy smooth. Look at how beautiful it turned out. Oh my goodness. Add a little more salt, a little more garlic, and if you even need it, you may want to add a little more pepper. Now, I decided at the last minute that we would add just a touch of Worcestershire to this mixture, and that would put it over the top. But of course, we're going to need to add in see, I've got that bottle of Worcestershire. Woo-wee! We're going to add a little kick to it. Now, let's get the mushrooms and the onions into the pan. But before we put them in the pan, we're going to warm them up just a tad bit. 1 minute is all it needed. Add those up, get those stirred in, get the chops down, and I kept a lot of the browning. We're going to put those chops down into the gravy, and we're going to let this mixture simmer for 30 minutes. And when that 30 minutes is over, dinner is served. We're going to be ready to plate it up and to have a delicious meal. Oh my goodness, guys, everything's over but the shouting. The gravy is perfect. The chops are in the pan and ready for that 30 minutes of simmering. And now Once that top comes off, you can see it's bubbly. The gravy has thickened just slightly. It has softened those chops. I've got some rice on the plate, and we are going to add a little bit of gravy on there too, so that we will enjoy tonight's dinner. So we have our smothered chops with a delicious onion mushroom gravy. I am so glad that you've been with us today and that you have been with us while we've cooked together, and we've certainly been cooking up a lot of fun here in the home of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme.